My name is Ethan, and I'm a junior at Northern Michigan University in Marquette, studying wildlife biology. Yesterday, during class, someone cracked a joke about the Michigan Dogman. Everyone laughed. Everyone except me. The second that word came out of his mouth, something old and heavy moved inside my head. It felt like a door I had been holding shut for years had suddenly swung open behind me. It has been 10 years since that evening at the old wooden bridge over the dead river, somewhere west of Lance. It took years of therapy for me to bury those memories. Years to convince myself they were nothing more than echoes of trauma. But even now, certain things still pull me back. So I finally decided to write it down. Maybe putting it into words will help me move on. Or maybe it will help someone else who ever thinks about entering those woods. I was 10 years old then, spending a late summer weekend at my grandfather's cabin just outside Lance. It was tucked deep inside the mixed hardwood and pine forest that follows the eastern edge of the Dead River Valley. That land is a broken patchwork of old logging roads, glacial hills, and low marshy hollows where fog gathers thick after sundown. Grandpa's cabin stood on a slight rise above it all, surrounded by cedar, maple, and tall white pines. It was one of those old logging cabins, with pine walls darkened by decades of smoke and oil. The air inside always smelled of cedar and gun oil. Every evening after dinner, Grandpa took me fishing on the river. He said it was the best way to teach a boy patience. Sit still. Stay quiet. Listen to the water speak. He was an old-school Yooper, a Vietnam veteran, a hard man to impress, the kind of man who fixed his own roof and sharpened his knives by hand. He rarely smiled, but he didn't need to. When you stood near him, it felt like even the forest respected him. We always headed out before sunset, when the mosquitoes settled down and the air cooled just enough to breathe. That evening, the fog arrived early. It lay heavy over the river, like breath clouding glass. Grandpa said we should pack up before it became too thick to find our way back. But I stayed behind. Curious, like always. I was drawn toward an old bridge downstream, the one he had told me not to go near. He said it wasn't safe. Being a stupid little boy, of course, I had to see it for myself. He was tying down the tackle box when I slipped away. I remember the river sounding slow and muted beneath the fog. I remember the smell of wet pine needles and a faint trace of rot somewhere close by. The bridge was maybe 200 yards from the bend. Half collapsed, covered in moss. The boards groaned under my boots as I stepped onto it, and I leaned over the edge to look down. At first, I couldn't understand what I was seeing. There was an ugly heap of bones caught in the driftwood. Ribs, skulls, and antlers all tangled together. Mostly deer. Then I noticed a piece of fabric snagged on a root. A red plaid shirt. I leaned closer. The water below barely moved. It was black as oil. That was when I heard it. Slow, heavy steps slapping through the shallows. Each step came apart from the next, like something large was testing its balance while moving toward me with purpose. I froze and stared into the fog. At first, I thought it was my grandfather. I whispered, "Grandpa." But the thing that answered was not a voice. It was a low, dragging sound. Half growl, half groan. So deep I felt it in my chest, like someone had pressed a vibrating tuning fork against my sternum. The fog around me seemed to pulse with it. Something splashed once in the shallows. Then it stopped, as if whatever was out there had frozen halfway through a step to listen. My hands shook so hard that I could hear the wooden railing tapping beneath my fingers. For a moment, nothing moved. There was only that slow, damp breath pushing out of the mist. Then the fog shifted, and I saw more of it. It emerged from the fog on the far bank, just enough for me to make out its shape. Tall, upright, broad-shouldered, with a head that looked wrong. At first, I thought it was a bear standing on its hind legs. Then it tilted its head. That movement was too human to belong to an animal. The light was dying fast, but I could still see wet fur clinging to its chest. I could see the muscles move when it shifted its weight. The smell reached me before anything else. Musky and sour, like wet dog and meat left too long in the sun. I gripped the bridge rail until my knuckles turned white. Every instinct in me screamed to run, to turn and bolt back up the trail toward my grandfather. But I couldn't. The thing stood between us. It blocked the only way off the bridge. If I ran, I would have to pass within arm's reach of it. That truth dropped into me like a stone. There was no way out. So I stood there, frozen and barely breathing, praying it would not decide to close the remaining distance. For a while it did not move. It only breathed and turned its head slowly from side to side. I could hear it from where I stood, maybe 30 feet away. Every exhale came out as a deep rumble. Then, slowly, it stepped forward into the shallows. The water barely reached its knees. I saw its arms were longer than a man's, ending in hands tipped with claws. It leaned forward, nostrils widening, as if it were smelling me. Up close, the worst part was its head. That was what made my heart turn solid. It was not exactly shaped like a wolf's. The muzzle was shorter. The jaw was wider. Like a man's skull had been pulled forward just far enough to become wrong. Its fur was slick and matted, exposing patches of dark, leathery skin underneath. But the eyes were what touched something ancient inside me. They sat too deep in its face, too intelligent. They caught the little light that filtered through the fog in a way that made them look almost wet, almost reflective, too focused, too aware, more aware than any animal I had ever seen. When it lifted its lip, I saw teeth made for tearing, not chewing. Long canines jutted out at uneven lengths. One was chipped, another bent slightly inward. Then I noticed something worse. A fifth canine was pushing up from the lower jaw. It grew at an unnatural angle, pointing inward toward the tongue instead of straight up like the other four. The whole mouth looked painful, raw, like the mouth of something still changing, still becoming. And yet it could shape a snarl that sounded almost like a sentence. Something primal struck me. Then came fear so pure that it felt like my body no longer belonged to me. I tried to scream for my grandfather, but my throat locked shut. The thing tilted its head again, and for one heartbeat, I swear it looked curious, like it knew what I was. Then everything broke at once. A gunshot split the fog. The blast was so loud it shook the bridge boards beneath my feet. I dropped to my knees and clamped my hands over my ears. The creature jerked backward, twisting to one side. Even through the ringing, I heard it snarl. Deep, furious, almost human. A second shot came right after it. Closer this time. Get up here. Grandpa's voice cut through the ringing in my ears. He was running down the path toward the bridge, his old .30-06 raised. Move, damn it! I staggered backward, my shoes sliding on the wet boards. The creature had not run. It crouched in the shallows, clutching its side. I could see blood spreading through the water, dark against the current. But even wounded, it did not flee at once. Instead, it stayed low in the shallows, one hand braced against a rock, its chest rising and falling hard. A deep, rattling growl rolled out of it. Not a roar. More like a quiet warning. Its head turned slowly from me toward the fog behind me, as if it were trying to locate exactly where my grandfather's voice had come from. The muscles in its jaw twitched. Its lips peeled back again, just far enough to reveal those uneven canines, while it sniffed the air and tried to find him through the mist. Grandpa fired again. The bullet struck somewhere in its shoulder. It howled. The sound was neither animal nor human. Then it turned and lurched toward the far bank. Not with the clean, powerful stride it had shown before, but with a stagger that revealed how badly the bullets had damaged it. Its left arm hung rigid at its side. Every step sprayed dark blood across the mud. It tried to leap, slipped once in the wet grass, then scrambled upward on all fours, panting hard, its claws ripping into the bank for grip. Only then did it manage to drag itself over the edge and vanish into the fog, leaving behind a ragged trail of blood and broken reeds. The trees shook as it passed. Then there was nothing but the river again. Grandpa seized my arm hard enough to leave bruises. "Don't look back," he said. "Don't say a damn word." He half dragged me up the hill toward the truck, his breathing rough and uneven. I could tell he was afraid. He never would have admitted it. When we reached the cabin, he locked the door, pulled the curtains shut, and poured himself a double shot of whiskey before sitting down at the table. He did not speak for a long time. Grandpa and I sat there in silence. The old cabin felt smaller than it ever had before, as if the walls themselves were listening. He had not even taken off his boots. He just sat hunched forward at the kitchen table, elbows on his knees, staring down at the floor as though the grain in the wood held answers. I sat across from him, both hands wrapped around a cup of cocoa he had made without looking at me. My heartbeat still felt lodged in my throat. Every time the wind pressed against the cabin siding, I flinched. At last, Grandpa drew in a long, unsteady breath and rubbed both palms over his face. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower than I had ever heard it. "Ethan, that wasn't the first time I've seen one of those things." I had no idea what to say. I only stared at him and waited. He looked exhausted, older than I had ever seen him, as if the fog from the river had followed us back and settled inside him. He continued, "People call them dogmen now. Back when I was your age, nobody had a name that really stuck. But they've been here a long time. Longer than you think." He leaned back, breathed out slowly, and let his eyes drift toward the window, like he expected the creature to be standing outside it. "It was the summer of '61, he said. "I was 13, and for 3 straight months, this place felt different. People did not say it plainly, but everyone was tense. Livestock disappeared. Campsites were found torn apart. Hunters came across deer half-eaten in ways no bear or wolf would leave them. Then the rumors began. People whispered about a monster in the woods." He paused and swallowed hard. "My friends and I, well, we were stupid. Kids hear the word monster, and they don't get scared. They get curious." I could picture him back then. Young, certain of himself. Probably just as reckless as I had been when I walked onto that bridge. "There were 4 of us," he said. "Me, Dylan, Wade, and a girl named Clara. I liked her. She didn't know. Or maybe she did. Girls always seem to know." His mouth tightened into a sad smile. "One night, sometime in August, we got the brilliant idea to go into the woods and look for the monster. Figured we'd scare ourselves, maybe drink a few beers, then brag about it the next day." He shook his head. "Stupid. Damn stupid." The cabin creaked as the wind moved through the pines, and Grandpa's face darkened. "We went out there with nothing but flashlights. No guns. Not even a damn pocket knife. The grown-ups didn't know. We followed the creek north of town, thinking maybe we'd find tracks or something." He tapped the table lightly. "And we found them. Big prints. Human-shaped, but wrong. The toes were too long. The heel was too narrow." Dylan laughed and said Wade had made them to scare everyone. But Clara did not laugh. She kept asking if they should go back. Grandpa stared down at his hands. I wished to God I'd listened to her. He cleared his throat and went on. "It came at us fast. No growl. No warning. 1 second, the woods were normal. Crickets, wind, the creek running. The next second, it was like somebody flipped a switch. Everything went dead quiet. My stomach tightened. That's when we saw it," he said, standing between 2 birch trees, maybe 40 feet away. Tall, upright, its eyes caught in the flashlight beams. Not glowing, just reflecting, like an animal built for hunting in the dark. He rubbed the bridge of his nose, struggling to hold himself together while pulling those old, painful memories back up. Wade yelled and ran first. Just took off immediately, crashing through the brush like a spooked deer. Dylan panicked and ran after him, their flashlight beams whipping crazily between the trees. I grabbed Clara's hand and pulled her with me, our feet sliding over the damp moss as we tried to follow the boys. We had not made it 10 steps before the thing roared and came tearing through the brush toward us. I could hear branches cracking under its weight like dry bones. I could feel the force of its charge vibrating through the air as it closed the distance in seconds, moving far faster than anything that size should have been able to move. His voice cracked a little. We scrambled up a rocky rise, trying to reach the old ranger trail. I didn't dare look back. I could hear it behind us. The claws striking stone. The panting. The way it breathed out like a person struggling to catch their breath. He closed his eyes. Then Clara tripped. The cabin went silent except for the soft ticking of the wood stove. When I turned around, she was already crawling back toward me, crying and screaming in absolute terror. She clawed at the ground, trying to find her footing, reaching for my shirt with trembling hands. Her flashlight slipped into the leaves while she tried to drag herself upright, sobbing my name as she fought to get to me. Grandpa's voice broke as he continued. I took 1 step back toward her. I reached out, trying to grab her. But the thing was already on her. I saw its hand. Those long fingers. Those claws. They closed around her ankle. She kept screaming his name. She tried desperately to catch his hand, but it yanked her back so hard that her fingers slipped right out of his. Grandpa swallowed, his jaw trembling. Ethan. It was so close I could feel its hot breath on my skin. I could hear every breath it took, every wet rasp, like its lungs were pulling air through meat instead of breathing it. And that stink was coming off it, that same foul, sickly sweet rot we smelled on the bridge. It hit me so hard I almost doubled over, even with everything happening around me. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, embarrassed, but he did not stop. When I finally made it home that night, Grandpa continued, his voice shaking, my parents took one look at me and knew something awful had happened. I was covered in dirt and pine needles, shaking like I'd been shocked with electricity. My mother kept asking where Clara was, but every time I tried to answer, all I could do was sob. He stared down into the grain of the kitchen table, as if he were watching the whole thing happen there again. I told them everything, the full truth. I didn't have the strength to lie. And God help me, part of me wanted them to say I'd imagined it, that I was confused. But they didn't. They called Clara's parents and the sheriff. His voice tightened. Clara's family lived only 2 streets away. When they arrived and understood she wasn't with us, her mother started screaming right there in our living room. Her father kept shouting that we had to go back into the woods, that she had to still be out there, maybe hurt. He tried to drag me with him. My dad had to pull him away. Grandpa swallowed. The sheriff came a few minutes later. Big man. Quiet man. He kept his voice calm, but I saw the grief in his eyes when he looked at me. A terrified kid who had seen something he never should have seen. He stopped Clara's father from rushing into the woods, told him it was too dangerous to go in blind at night. He let out a shaky breath. Then he took me aside, sat me down on our porch, told me to breathe, and asked me to tell him everything again. Slowly. From the beginning. So I did. I told him the entire truth. Every detail. I thought he would get angry, or accuse me of making it up. But he didn't. Grandpa's brow tightened. No, Ethan. He just sat there and listened with this look on his face. Like he had heard something like it before. He dragged a hand down his face. When I finished, he didn't tell me I was crazy. He didn't say it was a bear. He only said, all right, we'll handle it from here. And from the way he said it, I knew he believed me. What happened after that is the part one still don't like talking about. Grandpa's voice dropped even lower as he went on. The sheriff didn't waste any time. He radioed the local rangers and a couple of deputies, and within an hour, trucks were warming up outside. The plan was simple. Go in with lights, guns, and enough men to drive off whatever was out there. My parents wanted me to stay home, but the sheriff insisted on talking to me one more time before they left. He wanted to be sure he knew exactly where it had happened. Grandpa rubbed his wrists, as if he could still feel the cold porch rail from that night. I could barely stand by myself. My dad had to hold me up while I pointed out where we had been. After that, the sheriff said, "That's enough, son," and told them to take me inside. They left in a convoy. 5 trucks, spotlights, rifles, even a couple of flare guns. It was the first time I had ever seen adults look afraid. I stayed quiet and let him speak. The search went on all night, he said. I didn't sleep. Hell, none of us did. Clara's parents sat in our kitchen with mine. Her mother just kept rocking in her chair, whispering prayers. He swallowed hard. They didn't find her that night. Only more tracks. Those same long, twisted prints. Places where the brush had been torn apart like something huge had forced its way through. The next day, half the town joined the search. Farmers, loggers, shopkeepers, people who had known Clara since she was in diapers. They split into small groups and covered miles of forest. My whole world felt like it was holding its breath. Grandpa's eyes grew wet as he stared at the cabin wall. They found her that afternoon. He paused. What was left of her? A long silence settled between us. I did not push him. After a while, he continued. I didn't see her myself. My dad made damn sure of that. But I heard enough. The sheriff came back looking like he had aged 10 years. He told my parents in private, but I overheard some of it. They found her near the old fire break. Her clothes were torn. Her body was mangled, like something had eaten part of her. He drew in a slow, shaking breath. They said it looked like an animal attack. But no animal in these woods does that. Not like that. He wiped the corner of one eye. And the sheriff never questioned us again. He never doubted what we had said. In fact, he warned the men to stay close together after dark, told folks to bring their dogs and livestock inside for the next few weeks. Grandpa leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. They never caught it. They never even saw it again that summer. For a long time, more than 10 years, nobody reported anything like it around here. People figured the search parties, the dogs, all the commotion after Clara died had scared it off, pushed it deeper into the woods, or maybe out of the county completely. But people stayed afraid until the first snow came. Grandpa released a long breath, the kind that seemed to empty the strength from his chest. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, reflective, heavy with decades. Life went on after that, he said. Not because anyone forgot. You don't forget something like that. But people are good at pretending. That's how they survive. I barely finished school. I couldn't sit in a classroom for more than 10 minutes without thinking about the woods. After graduation, I enlisted. The Army sent me to Vietnam within a year. I thought maybe war would beat the fear out of me, or at least drown out the memories. He gave a humorless laugh. It didn't, but it gave me something else. Discipline, patience, a way to bury the parts of myself that kept replaying that night. When he looked up at me, the dim cabin light made every line in his face look deeper. When I came home after the war, I didn't go back to town right away. I bought this cabin instead. I spent my nights on the porch with a rifle and a spotlight. Spent my days walking the tree lines, following old trails, scouting creek beds. I wasn't looking for peace, Ethan. I was hunting. For years, he said, I searched for that damn creature. I thought if I found it, if I killed it, maybe Clara could rest. Maybe I could too. He paused, his jaw tightening. But nothing. Not a track. Not a sound. Just empty woods and my own damn thoughts. He leaned back and stared at the ceiling, as if the ghost of the past were still carved into the rafters. Then, in 1974, it showed up again. 2 loggers saw something strange cross the cut road north of here. They dropped their equipment and refused to go back. A week later, some hunters found a deer carcass torn up so badly they burned it where it lay instead of packing it out. He shook his head. I knew it was the same kind of thing. Grandpa set his jaw and continued. I tracked it for 3 days. It was careful, smarter than any animal, always one step ahead. But by then, I knew these woods better than I knew myself. He swallowed. On the 3rd night, I found it drinking from a creek bed about a mile west of where we saw the one tonight. A heavy silence settled between us. I shot it 3 times, 2 in the chest, 1 through the eye. It went down, twitched a few times, and died. He looked away, his voice low. I should have felt something. Relief. Justice. But all I felt was empty. He rubbed his hands together slowly, remembering. I dragged the body to a clearing and burned it. Sat there all night, making sure there was nothing left but ash. I didn't tell a soul. The sheriff from 61 was dead by then. And everyone else, well, they didn't need to carry what I'd been carrying. Grandpa's eyes softened. Then I met your grandmother. She was the first thing in a long time that made me want to live, instead of just exist. We settled in town. Started a family. I tried to forget the monster I had killed in the woods. He looked toward the window again, even though the night outside was still. And for a long time, I thought I had. He rubbed his temples slowly before continuing, his voice weighted with something darker. Then a few years ago, before your grandma got sick, another one of those things showed up around here. He shook his head. At first, I didn't want to believe it. I thought maybe people were just jumping at shadows, remembering old stories. But then I found tracks along the tree line behind the cabin. Same shape, same size, and that stink. He grimaced. That same rotten smell those things always carry with them. He paused, pain tightening his face. That was when I told your grandmother the truth. About 61. About Clara. About the thing I killed in 74. I had kept it from her for decades, thinking it was the kind of burden a man was supposed to carry alone. His voice cracked. But when I told her, she didn't call me crazy. She didn't leave. She just took my hand and said, "Then you better make sure this one never hurts anyone." He blinked hard, his eyes shining. So I did what I promised her. I went into the woods after it. A shiver crawled up my spine. This was about 5 years back. I tracked it for days. It was hanging around that same damn bridge you wandered onto today. Almost like that place pulls them in. I caught sight of it just after dusk, standing near the riverbank. He clenched his jaw. I shot it twice. Good hits. It should have dropped. But this one bolted into the brush so fast I didn't have time to chamber another round. He exhaled through his nose, frustrated. I followed the blood trail for miles, but it disappeared into the rocks near the ridgeline. After that night, the thing didn't show up again. No tracks. No sightings. No torn deer. Nothing. Like it packed up and moved on. He looked at me with a mix of sorrow and guilt. These dogmen have a way of disappearing when they meet strong resistance. I figured my shots had scared it off for good. His face twisted with guilt. So when you came to visit this summer, I thought the woods were safe again. I thought whatever had been lurking around here had moved on long ago. I never would have taken you anywhere near that river if I had known. He swallowed hard, his voice breaking. Ethan, I'm sorry. I put you in danger. I swore to myself after what happened to Clara that I would never let something like that happen again. And tonight, his breath caught. Tonight, I damn near failed you. He leaned forward and took my hand again. His grip was firm, even with the tremor running through it. Please, he whispered, barely loud enough to hear. Forgive me. I did not know what to say. I only nodded. And for a moment, he looked like the man I had always known. Strong. Unshakable. But beneath it, something was breaking. I left the cabin the next morning. Grandpa insisted on walking me to my dad's truck, but neither of us said much. When I pulled away, he stood there on the gravel road with one hand raised, the other gripping that old rifle a little too tightly. I did not know it then, but that was the last time I ever saw him. For a few weeks, everything seemed normal. Grandpa did not call, but that was not unusual. He was never much for phones. Then, on a Thursday evening in late September 2015, we got the news. Grandpa was missing. According to the sheriff, no one had seen him in town for almost a month. The cabin was empty when they performed a welfare check. His truck was still there. The door was unlocked. His rifle was gone. A half-finished cup of coffee sat on the counter. There was no sign of a struggle. No tracks. No blood. Search teams combed the woods for a week. They found nothing. My parents sold the cabin before winter that year. They said there was no reason to keep it. They only wanted closure, and they were more worried about their mortgage than anything else. They had no idea about dogmen. None of that. But I know better. Grandpa was not confused. He did not wander off. He went after it. The dogman we saw on the bridge. But this time, the damn thing must have gotten him. Even if you think I'm full of it. Even if you dismiss all of this as trauma, superstition, or a tall tale told by a frightened child who grew into a grieving adult, I know the truth about who he was. My grandpa was a hero. He risked his life more than once to protect innocent people from horrible things they do not even know exist. He fought monsters that should never have walked this earth. And he faced them alone because no one else would. And in the end, he paid the ultimate price for it.